module 26. In this module, we are going to discuss about corpus and its relations with dialectology or dialect study. So, the basic thing here is that we try to understand what dialectology actually meant in earlier years, how the entire concept of dialectology or dialect study changed with the availability of new large size language corpora, and what are the advantages now we get with regard to using language corpora for dialect study. Also, we would try to highlight the limitations of corpus in understanding the dialects, as well as finally we will try to see how this kind of approach is ever been adopted or used in Indian context. So, first let us have redefine the term or like understand the basic change in approach to dialectology and how corpus is actually going to contribute in a new understanding of the concept. So, traditionally, if you look at the history of dialectology, you can very clearly understand, starting from George Wenker till that people wanted to collect data from various dialects with some specific goals. First, they wanted to know, to be more precise, what are the unique sounds are available in those dialects which may differ from the standard variety, or if there is any special kind of lexical stock or vocabulary which is not available in the standard one, and how the new ideas, new concepts, unique ideas available in dialects which are now registered in the standard variety, and how what kind of relationships linguistic had the close proximities or close relationship between the dialects or between a dialect and a standard variety was there. So, in most cases, the study of dialects were very much highly specific, maybe for the purpose of writing a phonological description of a particular dialect, or producing a word list used in a dialect, or finding out some uniqueness in the grammar of the dialect. Also, at the same time, also to find out the unique lexical stock available in a dialect. And also, they wanted to identify what kind of relationships are there among those dialects, whether they belong to the same close relations or sister languages, or there is any cultural, linguistic, ethnological proximities or closeness among the dialects. So, in the traditional frame, most of the time, there was a specific goal for which the dialects were collected. And also, we notice that in those days, the approach to collect dialect was different. They never tried to be very exhaustive in data, very large in amount of data, but they were very specific. They used to have a well-defined pre-planned questionnaire with a lexical list, with a sample sentence list, and they used to go to the field, collect data or equivalents from the words from the informants or some sample sentences, and they used to analyze those data systematically and identify what are the words are there, what kind of sentences are used there, what kind of grammar properties are there, what kind of nouns, pronouns, grammatical constructions are available there. So, this was the more or less a very traditional, well accepted form or mode of dialect data collection and utilizations for description of a particular language or a regional variety of a language. Now, there is a transition in the sense that in last 20 years or so, we have noted that there are several changes in the approach of dialect study. First thing is that the questions which were normally asked in earlier dialect studies are somehow redefined. We are not only interested to know what are the sounds unique to a particular dialect, or what are the words unique to a particular dialect. We are also interested to know the total fabric of the community, the total linguistic fabric of the community. We are also interested to know how those languages are being used, how those lexical elements are being used in the day-to-day regular discourse, linguistic interactions, how these sounds are combined to produce the sounds, what kind of linguistic mechanism, linguistic repertoire they use, and whether these linguistic properties are adequately enriched enough to capture all their communication activities. Also, we want to identify how their speech and their writing differ, if there is close conceptual interface between those two varieties of dialects, and how, important question is, on what ground a particular dialect is different from the other or from that of a standard variety. Is it linguistic factors or some others? So also we are interested to know how dialects differs from region to region, what are the ethnocultural reasons behind that, what kind of ecological factors play important roles. So now it is not only the language, rather the entire community, the speech community who use that language as a variety is actually the center of investigation. Also, we address some important questions here, is that how far the study of dialectology contributes toward the growth of, say, sociolinguistics in particular, and sociology or linguistics in general. So we also need to know whether a particular dialect called dialect, it should be at all called a dialect. So what we emphasize here, so this is one shift in the concepts of dialect. Then there is another technical shift. The methods, the processes, the approaches or the tools that are used for collection of data are no more used now. We have more advanced devices, advanced tools, advanced techniques to collect data. So in a technological front, we also find there are certain changes, remarkable changes in the process of data collection. Third important part is that the concept of data, amount of data to be collected, and the concept of the selection of informants, these have also undergone change. Now we are not interested only on a set of words or a set of sentences which can be taken into consideration, and we are rather more interested to have the whole discourse, the entire speech narrative, or a long dialogic interactions for a long duration of time, so that we get far better complete picture of the dialogic interactions of the people involved in their own dialects. The basic thing is that now the entire approach of amount of data is changed. So we call it a free discourse text, which is very important, where we can have a long dialogic interactions among the members of the target community, and we can record the whole thing, digitize the whole thing, and preserve them and analyze them. Secondly, in the cases of selection of informants, you also notice that there is a change. We are not selecting informants as predefined. We are now interested to have the entire, all the populations arbitrarily selected, arbitrarily chosen for the whole process of collection of data. So we are not identifying that that particular person or that particular particular woman would be maximally suitable to provide us adequate information of the dialect. We are free to select any person who speaks that dialect. So this has been an important change. That means we can get a better representations of data. So today's dialectology is no more only the study of dialects. It is also far more expanded into the frame of language digitization and documentations, scheme where all minority languages or endangered languages, all mother tongues which are not recognized, approved, or properly digitized or recorded with sufficient amount of data and information. This dialectology now looks into this frame, tries to understand how this can be done. So here we find a new strategy, new approach, new goal in collection of data. So this transition has been possible because of the introduction of two important things. One is the concept of corpus has come into play, and the technology. These two things has made it possible for us now to rethink the whole process of dialectology. Particularly if I refer to that in recent times, the way the Helsinki corpus of English dialects, the Northern Ireland transcripted corpus of speech, or the Oxford Text Archive, Bank of English, or British National Corpus, or Penn Helsinki Language Database, they are collecting data, analyzing data, and the way they are collecting data is changing the overall concepts of dialectology. That means the entire principles, entire process of collecting a language corpus or a speech corpus is now thoroughly applied in cases of collection of dialects. So since we follow the whole methodology of dialect collection, what happens? We get far better representations of the linguistic evidences, of linguistic texts into the dialect. So this actually gives birth to a new concept, to a new idea, or new process we should say. We call it corpus-based dialectology. Corpus-based dialectology is now the basic thing which where goal is to collect data as you collect data from corpora, from different areas. So the way we follow for collecting data for a general referential corpus can also be followed for collecting data for a dialect. So we can refer to a scheme or a framework where from we can find some clear idea how we are going to collect data. According to our scheme, that a representative dialect corpus can have major two parts. The first part is written text samples, and the second part is spoken text samples. So the important thing is that in cases also it may happen that at certain cases the written version may not be available. That's true. There is more true in most of the times, because the dialects have only the spoken form. Most of the time they don't have the written version of their speech or the writing system through which they can be represented. But for our case, if we think that there is a writing system for a particular dialect or a variety, then we can have a well-defined frame. So we say that our dialect corpus, which means to be very exhaustive, largely representative of the dialect, can have two broad parts. One part will include the written text samples, while the other part will include spoken text samples. And in both cases, we can have large amount of information elicited from the informants from two different parts. One is from imaginative texts and from informative texts. So we can have four major types. If we get imaginative written text samples, maybe can collected from mythology, legends, history, geography, folk tales, folklore, fairy tales, fables, jail stories, ghost stories, love stories, rhymes, riddles, songs, ballads, proverbs, idioms, poems, plays, elegies, and others. Whereas informative texts in the written samples can be collected from business and commerce, their social life, their history, their religion, faith, then cults, rituals, nature, politics, culture, environment, games and festivals, sports, traditions, health, and different professions, hygiene, cultivation, and about obviously regarding to the migration, settlement in different parts. The same way, we can have also, in the same way, the same text can have also a reverse part, which is known as spoken text samples. So all those things can have two broad parts, one part having the spoken text and another part having the written text part. So this way, if we can collect the texts or information of these types in a large manner from the informants by direct interactions with them, not always based on a predefined questionnaire, and if we can involve with them in a large discussions, discussion of long duration, that is very much possible we can get large amount of data. So in cases of collecting data, we generally propose that rather than depending on the selected list of words or selected list of sentences, we can be little more elaborate in collection of data. So the interactions which should be recorded can be carried out at the particular locality or at the place where the local people of the dialects actually live. So we can record the entire thing at their place, in their home environment, so that the ambience is very natural, because that is an important part in dialect analysis and subsequent part. So here what we can do, we can have broadly three parts in our questionnaire, if at all we need to have. One part can have just a list of words which can be presented to the informants to collect translational equivalence from their respective languages, respective dialects. In that case, the informants has to be quite more selective, because those people who can understand those terms may be selected to provide those informants. Also, we can have a large list of sentences of different types, different textures, different forms, semantically, typologically different sentences, which also we can produce or give to the informants and ask them to produce similar constructions in the sentences, if possible, if available. Or if there is something new, something not available, not included in the questionnaire, that also can be included or can be recorded from the informants. The third part is most important part, is we are emphasizing that let us have a complete free discourse text. That means we can have, say, some issues, some events that is directly linked with their life, living, culture, ethics and civilizations. So these issues would be a broader issues where the informants of the locality are directly involved among themselves for a long duration discussions. Suppose we can ask them about their festivals, and many members can participate to describe their festivals, the issues of festivals, the importance of the festivals, how they prepare for the festival, how they observe different rituals and practices relating to the festival, how they perform pujas and all those things, and how they respect this particular festival, how the entire community get involved into that particular festival. So you can find out that you can have a long narrative. A large number of community members are actually involved in the whole constructions of the discourse. Now, if it's possible by modern technology to capture the entire discussion or the entire discourse in a digital form, where initially the members may be quite concerned or quite apprehensive that okay, their speech is being recorded in a very systematic manner, but ultimately what happens, when the discussion starts, when they get involved deeply into the whole discussions, then the question of their awareness gradually recedes and we get a more normal speech data. So this is a free discourse. This is one example, but we can also set many such examples. In fact, we did it with some informants in some dialects spoken in Jharkhand and Odisha, and we got a large amount of data which was very unique and spontaneous. There is no manipulation or no intervention from the data collectors. So we get original text data. So this is how the dialect corpus is being developed with the contribution of the uh, corpus linguistics. So this dialect corpus, how it contributes, that is an important part to understand. So we have in this part what you find that principally or theoretically a dialect corpus has a written text part and a spoken text part that constitute the original raw dialect corpus. Once this corpus is made available, we can utilize or you can apply all the techniques, all the methodologies, all the processes we use to process corpus in other languages or general languages also on the dialect corpus. Then first thing is this entire corpus, dialect corpus, now open for say transcription and normalization. So after this normalization and transcription, this entire raw corpus is now ready for processing. Now we can apply all the techniques of corpus processing of the dialect corpus. Then what we find is that core dialect database, which is error-free, which is available in written form, which is properly normalized and edited. Once this is done, we can use that database in different ways. The phonological part or the phoneme parts of the speech part or phonological aspects issues can be used to study the phonological aspects, phonemes, identification of phonemes, or the phonological processes used in the language of that dialect. The words and lexicon can be used directly for morphology and lexicon. Or multi-word, bigger word units can be used to compile those idiom databases or multi-word unit database of the language. And the sentences can be used for syntactic analysis of the writing a grammar of the dialect. And other information, extra linguistic information which has been embedded into that also will reflect on their life, lifestyle, living, faith, belief, religious, cultural, and many other issues involved into that. So what we propose here is that if we can have a complete dialect corpus, properly developed and processed utilizing the tools and techniques of corpus linguistics, we can have a far better representation of the dialect, and the analysis and extraction of relevant information can contribute in a large better way, in a far better way in understanding the dialects, how it is being used. So what we find is that dialect corpus has a far better application relevance in understanding the dialect. So here are the basic some points we can find out. The dialect corpus provides not only the necessary information relating to sounds and phonemes used in a dialect, but also supply huge amount of data relating to marks, words, idioms, sentences, phrases, and other linguistic elements used in the dialect. Second important thing is that a dialect corpus, due to its uniqueness in compositions and content, can contribute valuable linguistic and extra-linguistic information and data indispensable for mainstream descriptive linguistics, historical linguistics, comparative linguistics, social linguistics, and even ethno-linguistics. So what we have understood that traditional linguistics dialectic database, even if it is quite large, is normally skewed, normally based on the choice of the investigator. And they are very much usage specific, goal specific, object oriented. But for our purposes, we are talking of a dialect which is much more widely representative and having properties of not only phonetics, morphology, and syntax, but also a huge data about their non-linguistic. Since within the present frame of dialectological research, dialect corpora are indispensable to address the various issues of dialectology. We can study the dialect corpora to know how a dialect varies across places and times, how its vocabulary increases and decreases with the change of time, how the meanings of words change with the time and event, how a dialect varies within the same geographical region, how a particular dialect within a group of dialects become the standard one, and how linguistic features of a particular variety contribute in the process of standardization. So these are very important, crucial cognitive questions related to a particular dialect or dialectology. The other important contribution, the most important contribution for us now, those who work in dialect-based studies of life, society, and culture, may find dialect corpora immensely useful for authentic demographic and socio-cultural information. In fact, dialect corpora are the only resource for them, wherefrom they can collect the list of words, specialized terms, special idioms, phrases, and proverbs, and to generate dictionaries as well to show the interfaces underlying between the dialect and its people. So what happens in recent times, what we find is that, as we know that there is now the real questions of proper documentation of minority languages, endangered languages, so that we can preserve their resources, their heritage, their history, their culture. So we know that the loss of a language is basically loss of a history, loss of a heritage, and loss of knowledge of the society. So in no way we can allow those minority languages, endangered languages to be lost. So we can take help of the technology, we take help of the modern concepts to preserve them, to protect them, to promote them, so that they can sustain, they can survive, and they can flourish. So in the frame of the language documentation and digitization, the new concept of corpus linguistics are now helping a lot in dialectology. Here what we can do, we can not only collect a set of examples or set of sentences, we can have a full-fledged whole data in all possible varieties. From our personal experience, I can inform you here that while we are collecting data from a minority endangered language in Odisha as well as in Jharkhand, what we did is that we collected not only their regular spoken interactions taking place with the interviewers, the team of data collectors, also we recorded a long durations of speech that is taking place among the members of the communities in their own dialects. We also had a long collections of data from the riddles, from the folk tales, from the folk songs. They had multiple different kinds of songs and different social occasions. They recited them, they sang them, and the drama they played, all those things are recorded in full form. So these are also contributing to us towards getting an overall complete picture of the community. So dialectology is no more a collection of lexical lists or a set of sounds or a few sentences. Rather, it is a complete attempt for complete projection into the ethno-linguistic, ethno-community or community-based life and living and culture, so that along with their language, so that study of the language of a particular dialect, study of the linguistic elements of the dialect is much more complete, much more varied, and much more universal to represent the language. So here we conclude with the statement that the applications of the methodologies, the strategies, and tools and techniques of modern corpus linguistics has given a new lease of life to the traditional frame of dialectology, because now we have a better opportunity to represent in a dialect in our study in a far better way than we used to do even a few decades ago. Thank you.